and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 133, and this is the current economic collapse news brief. And we're going to get right into the current economic collapse news, and we're going to go out to Greece. And it looks like Greece and China are starting to make arrangements and have agreements in working together, and Greece is allowing China to come in and invest into Greece. And what this says here, the China Development Bank signed a cooperation agreement that they will invest in Greece. And the Greek government officials hailed the interest expressed by the CDB as a sign that the Chinese have confidence in Greece's prospects for economic growth. And, Greece is assisting China to get involved in Europe's economy, and China is helping Greece overcome the crisis. And what we're seeing is, as the United States is waging war to continually keep the dollar as the reserve currency, they're in the Middle East, they're losing control of Egypt, they're losing control of Yemen, the U.S. government is losing control in Syria, Iraq, Bahrain, and we're seeing this happen all over the place. And the government and central bankers are doing whatever they can to keep the dollar as the reserve currency. Meanwhile, China, on the other hand, is making deals for the future. They're making deals as when they become the new reserve currency, that people will go to them to use their currency as the reserve currency. And they've made deals with Russia, Australia, North Korea, Iran, Syria, Brazil, and here we're seeing that they're making deals with Greece. And pretty soon, what's going to happen is, like, Greece right now is getting debt from the Eurozone, while China, on the other hand, is trying to invest and bring revenue into Greece to get them out of this huge amount of debt. We'll have to see how this plays out. We don't know, but it looks like they're moving forward with investment ideas instead of just throwing and telling the Greek people that you have to lay off $25,000 to get this chunk of debt that they will not be able to pay off because they have no revenue to bring in to pay it off. And this is why they're on their multiple amount of bailouts right now, because as they told us, a year ago, they will, everything's fixed in Greece. They just need the one bailout. There's no problems. Here's the bailout. Look, see, all eyes off Greece. Let's move back to the United States stock market. Everything's fine. Just like in Cyprus, when they told us they're doing the bail-ins, and they said it's only, the capital controls are only for 2 weeks. You notice how the mainstream media just drops it, never mentions it again, but it's been over, 120 days now that the capital controls are still in effect in Cyprus. So what they tell us is always the opposite. What stats they give us are always the opposite. Actually, when they give you a stat of like unemployment at 7.6, just triple that. That's the real number. And we have to remember, the stats that the mainstream media, the government, are all throwing at everyone are manipulated to make it seem like everything is fine. We have proof and fact that they changed the calculation for unemployment. They changed the calculation for inflation. They changed the calculation for GDP. Why did they change this? Well, they had to manipulate it, because if they didn't manipulate these numbers and massage them and make them look better, everything would not look as good as it is. And that's why, since GDP is going into the negative area, they came out just a little while ago saying that they were going to add in research and development. They're going to change GDP all the way back to the Great Depression. They're going to recalculate everything. Why? To make it all look better. Instead of negative GDP, they're going to bring it up into 3% of GDP. Why again? To make everything look better than it is. And again, we can't look at what these officials tell us. Words, they talk a lot, and what comes out of their mouth is meaningless. We have to look at the actions, because if we just listen to what they say and believe them and believe all these statistics, you'll end up losing, your entire wealth, just like everyone, 38% of the people did in 2008. Let's just go back there for 1 second to listen to what these officials have told us with their official statistics and their official numbers and their indicators. Let's go back to Ben Bernanke for a second. In the year of 2008, he told us that the Federal Reserve is not forecasting a recession. From all the indicators and the numbers that they're using, there is no indication that a recession is coming whatsoever. Well, all those statistics and the housing market doing so well and everyone telling us that the housing market is up and it's doing better than ever and housing could never come down. Guess what happened? It all came down. And guess what? Those statistics and his economic calculations who forecasted no recession, there was a recession just a couple months later after he told everyone. Plus, they told us the subprime was contained. It's not a big deal. Well, if it wasn't a big deal, why is he buying all those subprime mortgages from the banks right now? They're all toxic. They haven't stopped. They've continued to purchase them. So again, whatever these people say, whatever numbers they use, it's always the opposite. Okay. Now, talking about always the opposite, let's go to Obamacare. You know, that great insurance that everyone wants and everyone needs, and even if you don't, we're going to shove it down your throat, and if you don't take it, guess what? You got to pay us anyhow in a penalty, in a tax. That's how good it is. Because if we can't get you to take it, we're going to tax you anyhow. So it really, you have to really think about it. What do they really want then? That's right. They really just want money. So they made deals with insurance companies, and this is being reported all over the place, that insurance premiums are going to skyrocket because really there is no competition, because this is what happened in the automotive industry with the insurance. You have to have it. It's mandatory. So there's no competition anymore. Why would anyone drive their prices lower? They'll only increase it because everybody has to have it. So you got to pick one of them. So we're already seeing the problems. And if we look at the government staffers in the United States government who complained already, and the Congress who've complained already, and wait a minute, didn't they vote for it? Yes, they did. But they're complaining about it, that it's too expensive for the staffers, and it's $5,000 for each individual, and if they don't pick up this insurance, they won't have any, and they'll have to pay in taxes. And if I have a family, I have to pay $11,000, and if I don't pay it, I have to pay taxes. What are we going to do? Well, guess what? They got bailed out. Now, what about the rest of America? What about all the people who are just barely getting by with their salaries, making the money, and they're just struggling to get through it? They are being forced to take medical insurance, and if you don't take it, it doesn't matter. You're going to be paying in another way. When something is for the people, you do not penalize them. You do not have to sell it like a used car salesman like Obama is doing it. And there was a story about a family company, small companies, and the insurance companies have already warned small businesses and customers that premiums could rise around 20% or so in 2014 under this new plan. And you know, President Obama is also out there saying that he's going to shut down the government if they don't fully fund his plan. Now, that is ridiculous, first of all, making threats if you don't fully fund something. And they would never, ever shut down the government. Because really think about it. What would that happen? I mean, if they shut down the government, Medicare, Medicaid, every single program, everything that they have, all their salaries, and everything would come to a screeching halt. And guess what? They're never, ever going to let that happen. Okay. Let's move on here. Now, U.S.-Egypt alliance on a verge of collapse. Now, we know that there are a lot of things going on in Egypt, and there is a type of coup, but you know, the U.S. government doesn't want to call it a coup because then they would have to stop aid and funding Egypt. the U.S. wants their puppet government in there. This way they can protect the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, because this is what it's all about, and protect the Western Central Bank. But what's happening here, America's alliance with Egypt is starting to fall apart, and a lot of people in Egypt, the majority of them, they are coming out and protesting, saying no aid from the U.S. We don't want the U.S. in here, and we're seeing a lot of this. And especially, of course, McCain is out there, talking about Egypt. And during the press conference in which McCain threatened sanctions, the leader of Egyptian Popular Current Party, Hamdine Sabahi, who is a co-leader of the ruling National Salvation Front, described McCain as a senile old man. And we have to remember, President Obama is always letting us know that the sequester is, we're going to have to cut people's jobs, we can't have fireworks. But listen to this. We give Egypt $1.5 billion a year in aid. So where is the government sequestering now? Yes, if you notice, the money never stops flowing into the Middle East to keep the puppet governments propped up, to protect the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, and to protect the Western central banks. And we're seeing the Middle East rise up right now, and the U.S. empire is doing everything to control what is going on, because they are losing control. And this is a very big problem out there, and this is why you're seeing this terrorist threat and what's going on out there. All right, let's move on here. Now, the Syrian opposition, they're starting to put together a national army. These are the paid mercenaries by the U.S. government. Most of them aren't even Syrian, and we're seeing troops come in from Turkey, paid mercenaries from there, and they're putting together an army and having all these people get together. And it looks like they're putting together around 6,000 men, and they're calling themselves the National Army and trying to get reorganized to fight against Assad. And, because the paid mercenaries have been pushed back, they've been losing, nothing's been working. Everything the government has tried with humanitarian reasons, chemical weapons, trying to blow up Assad, everything has not worked. And we could be seeing a false flag to get the American people and Congress all riled up about going to war with Syria, because they're running out of options, and they've tried everything. I mean, they tried to bribe Russia to step aside while the U.S. moves into Syria. And by the way, there are troops in Jordan standing by for this time for them to move into Syria. Okay. Now, we see another story that Americans are rejecting U.S. citizenship because of a new law, which is FACTA, which is the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. And the United States is the only country out of 34 in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development that continues to tax citizens regardless of where they live around the world. And for most of the people who live abroad and make money, they are renouncing their citizenship. And what they're seeing, so they don't have to pay these taxes, we're seeing the number of Americans who decided to renounce their citizenship in the second quarter of 2013 increased sixfold the same period in 2012. The Swiss government said the United States wishes to ensure that all income earned worldwide by U.S. taxpayers on accounts held abroad can be taxed by the U.S. And this was the Swiss government stated this. Let's move on here. The NSA is telling everyone that domestic spying is legal. Under Section 702 of the FISA amendments, It authorizes the NSA to gather intelligence without warrant on the communications of foreign targets, stipulated that they are non-U.S. citizens and outside the U.S. at the data collection. And they're telling us that they have legal authorizations to search for America's email, phone calls without a warrant. And this is where I have this problem. First of all, there is no law that overrides the Constitution. The Fourth Amendment, you're not allowed to search without a warrant. And you cannot just create a law to say, oh, by the way, here's a new law, we're allowed to search. No, you would have to, create an amendment and have all the states ratify this new amendment, which cancels the existing amendment. And they know this would be impossible because all the states would not go for it. So instead, they try to convince us that this law is above the Constitution. But according to the Supreme Court case, Marbury versus Madison, it goes on to say the justices held through Marshall's forceful argument that on the last issue, the Constitution was the fundamental and paramount law of the nation, and that an act of the legislator repugnant to the Constitution is void. In other words, when the Constitution, the nation's highest law, conflicts with an act of the legislator, that act is invalid. This case establishes the Supreme Court's power of judicial review. So what this is any law that conflicts with the all-powerful Constitution, the highest law of the land, it is completely null and void automatically. And you just can't create these laws. It's almost like the government coming out saying today that no one has free speech because of the law we just passed. They can't do it. It's the same thing with this. Don't let the government try to trick you to think that this is actually a law when it isn't. And this goes with anything, with the Second Amendment, with all these gun laws. I hate to say it. You cannot put limits on the Second Amendment. And anything limiting the rights of the people to carry, to bear arms, you cannot place as a law. They're automatically null and void. Okay, let's move on. Now, the frightening reality about how easily hackers could shut down the U.S. Let me just go and read this report that I'm citing here. Hacking into and shutting down industrial systems on which the U.S. relies is staggeringly easy, according to a recent presentation from the Black Hat Hacker Conference. And they went on to say, just picture this, okay? A few pump station operators along New York City water tunnels fire up their computers to check the status of various water pressure readings. But their networks have been hacked, and the readings they see on their computers are not real readings. The adjustments they make cause the water pressure to skyrocket, blowing several mains and cutting water to various parts of the city, if not the entire city. That's all they would have to do. And attacks require significantly fewer resources and skill than previously thought. In other parts of the northeast U.S., hacked high-voltage transformers spin out of control and explode. The blackout could cut as wide as the tri-state area and last for months, compounding any attempt to fix the water lines. No water, no electric, pure mayhem. And what this hacking community is doing is they're showing that anybody could hack into the system with ease and bring the entire system to its knees. And by doing this, it would put the U.S. in complete mayhem. And what's interesting is that we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of the 2003 blackout that happened in the Northeast. And they're trying to make us believe that it was downed trees that made a cascading failure. And other people report that there was a program glitch or error that was spawned the blackout, and I believe that was Wired magazine, if I remember correctly. And there are many different stories out there, but it seems like it was a test to see how easily it would be to bring down the system, because going forward, they know that they're going to need some type of doomsday false flag event, and that's eventually what they are preparing for. Because you have to remember, nothing is really going well. The war's getting a very difficult time getting the war with Syria started. They can't control the Middle East. It's very difficult. They have this terrorist threat. No one's buying it. The lid was blown off of all the spying and all the lists that were being created by Edward Snowden, where the government, is trying to quickly cover up this whole entire spying thing. And we're seeing this all over the place. And the terrorist threat, they're saying that the 18 U.S. embassies will be able to reopen on Sunday and Monday, but the Yemen one will still stay closed because of the Al-Qaeda threat there. And you have to remember, Yemen is the choke point of the Gulf of Aden, and they could control and stop the shipment of oil in and out of that area, and that's why, and they're losing control in Yemen also, but this is why they're continually focusing on that country right now. And we're seeing, U.S. drone attacks in Yemen kill more people. We're seeing prisoners that just happen, to escape right before the terrorist threat. A lot of Al-Qaeda prisoners saying that they escaped, and these are, terrorists running free. And in Iraq, they're losing control there, and we see a major bombing in Iraq, 64 killed, 200 wounded, and we will have to see how this all plays out. And you have to remember, the entire goal is to get into Syria, maintain control in the Middle East, keep the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, and this is the main goal for the central bankers in the U.S. to fight to keep this intact. And they are losing the battle, so we could see something happen in the next week or two, because you have to remember, in September 30th, the fiscal budget comes to an end with the supply of weapons to the Syrian rebels. We're talking about, the Fed is talking about tapering, and we have the German election coming up during September. A lot of things are happening in September coming up, and they really need to start to get something done. It's funny because yesterday I listened to Greg Manarino, and he was talking now about something happening in October. I've been saying this for quite a while now, and I believe that there will be an event that will trigger this. And what I like to do is I'm going to see if I can get Greg back on the X22 report, and I like to go into more depth of this fall collapse that we're both talking about. So I'm going to reach out to Greg and see if we can get together and talk about this. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.